So if I have a camera this size, I can easily contain it in a camera bag just like this, but what if I have the world's largest camera? Well, then what do I need to contain that? Well, then you just need something like this. This is the Vera C Rubin Observatory. This is housing the world's largest digital camera, and we are here in Chile to share with you the first images available from this 3200 megapixel camera. I'm Chris Nichols, this is PetaPixel. We're very excited to witness it. So we're driving up this small mountain road to the summit in the Vera Rubin Observatory, and it's been a bit of a journey for us to get here. I mean, from North America, a long flight down to Chile, and now we're in this van. We're driving up this 35-kilometer road off the highway to get to the observatory. But actually, the LSST camera took a very similar route. So it was put into these custom-built protective enclosures with advanced anti-vibration mounts to protect all the lens elements and sensitive equipment. You don't want any jarring. It was then placed in a chartered 747 and flown down here and then driven by truck the rest of the way. It's kind of a similar journey to what we did. Now this is only a 35-kilometer road to the summit, but even us in this van, we're driving fairly slowly. You can probably see how much it's shaking and rattling. Well, the LSST has to avoid as much vibration as possible, so they drove it by truck at 5 kilometers an hour. What's going to take us 1 hour to get to the summit took the LSST all day to arrive.
Look, when I'm editing together a video where we travel to Chile and take a look at the observatory that's producing the world's largest photo, well, you're gonna need some sick beats to hold that all together. But thankfully, my friends at Audio have me covered. You see, Audio has a massive library of original and constantly expanding music, and no matter what kind of project I'm putting together, I can always count on Audio to have a song that's gonna fit the action absolutely perfectly. And in this episode, we're talking about the biggest photo taken by the biggest camera. Well, let me tell you about the biggest deal. How about lifetime access to all of Audio's wonderful music tracks, not for the usual $500, which is still a great deal, but $300 off, $199 for lifetime access. You just have to use coupon code PetaPixel199. That's a smoking deal you should absolutely take advantage of, so thank you so much to Audio for providing it and sponsoring this episode.
Okay, so we are inside the observatory now. You can see the control center there. They're doing a whole bunch of testing here. And I want to take this opportunity to talk about the camera itself, the LSST module. Now, we did a video already where we talked a lot about the LSST in Slack in Stanford, and that's where we went all over the actual camera specs. I definitely recommend you watch that video. But this whole experience and this whole project is not just about the camera, it's about the camera and the telescope, and that's what we're gonna cover here today in our video. But I do think we should do a bit of quick recap on the camera itself, just so we're all on the same page. And this is actually a really cool graphic here in the door. This outside circumference is actually the 1.6 meter across lens element, the front lens element of the camera. It is humongous. And then here you can see the sensor itself. 3,200 megapixels, 189 16 megapixel sensors, all lined up in an array. Now these sensors are grouped together on 21 adjustable rafts plus 4 corner rafts, and they can just adjust these to get absolute maximum flatness. If you consider that the average hair is about 70 microns, my hair is probably like 100 microns thick, then they got this down to 4 microns of unevenness across the entire plane. That's pretty incredible. Now in our last video, a lot of you put some interesting questions in the comment section. I want to answer those now to give you more information about the camera. So first off, is this good for street photography? No, it's 3,000 kilograms. It's incredibly heavy. Is it good for wildlife photography? Kinda yes, because it actually gives us a 3.5 degree field of view, which is roughly like a 600 millimeter full frame lens. Of course, it is mounted in observatory. Condors maybe, I don't know. So I was actually corrected by some very smart scientists. This is actually not ideal for shooting condors, so sorry about that. So what about wedding photography? Well, it doesn't have dual card slots, so professionals are gonna hate it anyways. No IBIS, and on top of that, remember that 3200 megapixels, each single photo is gonna be like 25 gigs on a memory card. So, you know, you'd fill up a 1 terabyte SD card and 40 images. That's like a roll of film. Now, like any camera, this has an aperture. It's an equivalent f1.23 aperture. That's the only one you get, but that's a lot of light gathering. And this has a mechanical shutter. It's a carbon fiber focal plane shutter, but the camera's typically doing exposures around 15 to 30 seconds per shot to gather all that light. To keep signal to noise ratio under control and give us maximum image quality, they super cool this thing down to below minus 100 degrees Celsius. They've got a really advanced cooling system as well as heaters that can just keep the equilibrium exactly where it has to be if necessary. And this is all operating inside a vacuum chamber. So the inner elements, the sensor, all in a vacuum chamber. That way we can keep any outside molecules of air or moisture out of the camera and avoid any sort of problems with condensation. Okay, so if you ever want to know what's going on in the mind of a scientist, this whiteboard is a really good example of it. But don't stare too long into the abyss because there is some sick here, a lot like a psychopath's journal. But what I want to point out are these two words right here, Grizzy and UGrizz, because this has to do with the filters in the LSST camera. So the LSST camera has this really ingenious array of filters. It's basically on a carousel, 5 filters surrounding the circumference of the camera, and then individually they can go down a rail and then slide in front of the lens. So I never want to change my filters by hand ever again. Now, there are actually 6 filters that they're going to use, but they can only have 5 at a time mounted, and they can change these out manually as they need to. But that's where these letters come into play. And these filters work very similarly to the photographic filters that we use with our cameras, where it's all about letting through certain bandwidths of light while blocking others, okay? So Kevin Reel, our host, who's been really gracious to us, has a really cute way of explaining this. So let's go with UGrizz first. U is for ultraviolet light, just letting through the ultraviolet spectrum. G for green, R for red, I for infrared, and then Z for that's more red. It's just a higher scale in the nanometer of what infrared light it's going to let through. But you can also then switch it over to this array. So green, red, infrared, that's more red, and then Y for why so red? That goes even higher in the nanometer scale. Anyways, it's a cute little way to see the filters they use and how they usually set them up. All right, so we find ourselves on top of a mountain, Cerro Pachón to be exact, up here in the Chilean Andes. Why this location? Well, I mean, I think it's for the view. It's stunningly beautiful, but I'm sure there's some very important scientific reasons as well. Of course, we are high, and that gets us above a lot of the weather. It's also incredibly dry here, good atmospherics, so it's an ideal location for the observatory. And speaking of amazing views, I mean, look at that building. It is eye-catching because it's so unique in the way that it's structured. And, you know, some people have said it's Sphinx-like or duck-like or something like that, but there's actually very important reasons for why they've designed it this way. First off, Cerro Pachón as a mountain is ideal because the way that the cliffs are structured, the wind kind of blows upwards and creates this bubble of soft air at the top of the mountain, and that's very important. You don't want a lot of vibration and a lot of turbulence, but actually the building itself is designed to also prevent as much wind turbulence as possible around the building and around the dome itself. So there's method to that very beautiful madness. And this project has been going on for like 20 years alone, and there's a lot that goes into building something as grand as this. So back in about 2007 is when they were really scouting the area, clearing the mountaintop, flattening it for construction, and then they really started to break ground around 2014 and then build the structures that we have around here. The Vera C Rubin Observatory has a huge staff, very talented people, scientists, engineers, construction workers, you got remote workers, and it's all from a very international community. Okay, so I find all this fascinating, and there's something I want to try to get across. And remember that anything that I'm explaining to you guys here is going to be grossly oversimplified, but I really just want to talk about some interesting numbers that give some concept of what we're dealing with here. So, first off, the LSST and the telescope, they're not going to be taking gigapixel stitches, just one photo, one photo, one photo, one photo, and putting them into a large photo. They're actually be on an advanced schedule, shooting some areas with more attention, some areas with less, but basically a complete scan of the southern sky sky. We're talking like 7 terapixels of resolution, all right? So then I was figuring out like, well, we're PetaPixel, okay? That's 10 to the power of 15 pixels. That's what we named our company, you know, and that's because it's supposed to be a huge cosmic unlimited almost number. Well, it turns out it's actually not that unattainable, because in a year, if you look at just resolution, we're getting well over a petapixel of resolution every year, and this project's going for 10 years. I also want to get across just a little bit of an idea of how amazing the actual telescope itself is. So the main mirror is going to be about 8.4 meters across. It's actually a very compact design, and both mirror 1 and mirror 3 are actually molded out of the same piece of glass. I mean, they're one unit. It's quite fascinating. This is also incredibly fast, so the mounting system is very powerful but very smooth, and this can move the telescope very quickly in between shots. So effectively they can scan the entire southern sky over 3 nights. Or if they wanted to, they could just focus on one single area, you know, that 9-degree field of view that we talked about, that circle that they're shooting, and they could just shoot that 800 times in one night if they wanted to, or anywhere in between. They've got very advanced scheduling algorithms that will decide where to put attention, where it needs to shoot next, where it needs to move. So really we have an incredible piece of technology, and I can't wait to see the results. All right, so this is a really cool opportunity. We actually get to see the Simony telescope, the LSST array, it's all moving. And I mean, what you're seeing right now is it moving slowly. It moves much faster than this. And remember we talked about the fact that this can shoot the entire southern sky in 3 nights. I mean, that is incredible. No other telescope can do that. And it's thanks to this powerful design and very interesting motors. And this is so significant because look, there are other telescopes in the world that have similar fields of view, but nothing that can shoot at the relatively fast shutter speeds that it does, at the speed that it's able to traverse the sky, and how many photos it can take over time. I mean, that means that the dome moves quickly, the scope moves quickly, and all of this while everything's in focus and aligned perfectly. And so how do you move the world's largest camera in this giant telescopic array smoothly and quickly? Well, it's actually fluid dynamics. So they're actually pumping high pressure oil from below, and the array is floating on this oil. Now I've been told it's not baby seal oil, it's not 5W40. I've been told it's synthetic and that's it, but it's pumped at extremely high pressure, to the point where the array is actually so easy to turn that we've been told the PetaPixel team could actually by hand rotate this entire array. They are not going to let us do that, but 3 people can actually move this thing by hand. But the speed goes beyond just the actual physical movements of this telescope or how fast the camera can fire. It also comes down to how quickly they can transmit data. We're going to talk about that next. Okay, so I've been told that it's quite noisy here, and that's because we've got the data processing center right behind us here in this room. Now, all those images that come out of the camera, they're actually immediately sent from the back of that room directly to the SLAC laboratories in Stanford, where we first saw the LSST in our first video. Now this is incredible because they have a fiber optic cable network going from here all the way to SLAC directly 103,000 kilometers. Now these images, I said, are about 25 gigs. They're compressed down to, let's say, roughly 8 or 9 gigs and sent over the fiber optic network, and they arrive at the SLAC laboratories in less than 10 seconds. And this constant streaming of data is very important because they can only store the information here at most for like a month's worth, and then it's full. But the SLAC laboratories, way more storage to start to contain all this. Now this information does actually have to be held for about 80 hours, and I know that has some consternation amongst the scientific community, but we've been waiting for a lot of this data for billions of years to come here. What is another 80 hours, right? I do want to mention, though, that alerts will be sent immediately. Within a matter of minutes, that'll be sent out to the scientific community. And alerts can be anything like the brightness of this area changed dramatically, or an object that was here is no longer here, or this has moved a significant amount. We're talking about, I don't know, something like 10 million alerts every night. So there's still going to be tons of data released immediately. So the actual data throughput is fascinating. It takes these very loud computers to operate, but I'm going to be saying this is slightly quieter than my gaming PC, so I don't know what Jordan's complaining about. So the cameras that we use every day have to have very precise focusing, but in compared to that telescope, it actually seems very basic. You know, we're basically focusing glass elements farther away or closer to the sensor and hoping that everything is aligned properly. But this goes well beyond that. So a lot of telescopes out there are just focusing on very tight areas and single points in space. So they use adaptive optics to focus those properly. You're just worried about one object. But this thing is a wide field of view spanning so many celestial bodies, and you want all of them to be in focus across that one photograph. It takes a lot more. So this uses active optics. Now, it's not just about focusing, it's actually also about optical corrections. On the sensor plane itself, first off, there are 4 corner rafts, and these sensors are actually way off focus. They're meant to be off focus because they collect defocused data. When you look at a telescope, it actually has a big camera in the very middle blocking light. So your actual image circle is a donut, okay? And these out of focus rafts will give you these out of focus donuts. And you can judge a lot by the look of these. How far things are out of focus, if there's any coma, any astigmatism, any other optical aberrations, these can all be corrected for just by analyzing that data. And this is an ongoing process, so the camera teams up to this point have been building lookup tables to give them a really good starting point of what adjustments have to be made. You got to remember that as this telescope moves, you know, the rotation of it, adjusting the azimuth, basically how high it's pointing, these all have an impact on the mirrors, and gravity will change how much they flex and move. This all has to be accounted for. So first off, these lookup tables, this is something they develop, but eventually this will all be largely automated, and so the system will actually be able to look at what adjustments have to be made, make them right away for the next shot that's going to happen. And then it goes beyond this because there's also guider sensors. These are actually taking photos like 9 times per second, so they're shooting far more rapidly. And this is doing a more traditional look at single points in the sky, like a star, and then seeing if there's focusing issues there. So this all goes into ensuring that this is as optically correct as possible. But there's more. There are these hexapods, basically 6 mounting legs on the mirrors, and those can be adjusted to, move the mirrors around, shift them to correct things like coma and astigmatism. And of course, to focus the mirror as well, just farther or closer to the camera itself, much like you would on a camera lens. But then it goes far beyond that, because what you can also do is make minor adjustments, okay, very small micron level adjustments with pistons attached to the mirror assemblies themselves. And so mirror 1 and mirror 3, you can actually adjust by pushing and pulling these pistons, very slight changes across the entire surface of the mirror. It is fascinating. I'm oversimplifying it, but hopefully it gives you an idea of just how much goes in to getting the best image quality possible. All right, so it's getting dark. We just got to witness a glorious sunset. I'm sorry you guys missed it, but it was fantastic. Look, there's a sea of clouds there, just epic. But it is getting dark, the sun's almost down, and this is when things get really exciting in the astronomy world, because the doors are open on the Vera Rubin Observatory. The LSST is powered up. Let's go see what it can do. Okay, so this is the control center. This is where the magic happens. This is where all the teams are working hard to operate the telescope, to capture imagery, to do their calibrations and tests. And I really want to break down how this data is going to be given out to the community and what it's going to look like. And I think it's useful to take this in steps, okay, just to see what steps take place before we get our final information that's useful. So this is taking a photograph. It's very much like raw data out of all of the cameras that we use every day. And this raw data is going to have some influences from the instrumentation itself. So this first raw packet is sent to Slack, and there they're going to remove a lot of that instrumentation out of it. Okay, so you're going to get now a second step which looks a bit more clear. It is still a photograph, So then we go to step 3, okay? So we take this photographic imagery, and from that we make catalogs of data that are most useful to the scientific community. I mean, scientists love photographs as much as the rest of us, but even more than that, they love looking at just tables and columns of data. And so from this data, you can figure out a lot. You can see the location of all of these objects in space. You can see how bright they are. I mean, how many photons were collected in those areas. You can see where things are moving, where things have changed. And remember that we're going to be collecting this data over 10 years. It's a big time-lapse video of just the entire southern sky. And so that's what's going to be most useful for them. And I also want to talk about something a lot of people are questioning, and that is, well, why not put another telescope into space? You know, people mention things like Hubble and James Webb, and those are amazing scientific achievements as well, but they have a different goal, okay? So they're very tight field lenses, like an ultra telephoto lens, and they can only point at small portions of space over time. And so scientific groups are petitioning all the time to get certain amounts of time using those devices and getting data from those areas. So hopefully this then makes sense when we think about how this is scanning the entire southern sky, and this data is going to be made available to the larger scientific community. No petitioning, no trying to get certain amounts of days on a telescope. This data is going to be shared out there. And I think it's important to differentiate that what Rubin Observatory is going to do here, cataloging the southern sky over the next 10 years, is impossible to do on any space-based telescope. And the amount of data they're collect is, well, astronomical. All right. Now, I mentioned scientists love photographs, and yes, James Webb, Hubble, they capture beautiful color imagery that just sparks the imagination of the public. But the Rubin Observatory can also make beautiful photographs. And what we're here to be a part of is to get to experience these first public images released, so let's take a look at them now. So those were stunning photographs to look at. And the takeaways that I get from it personally, first off, it reminds me a lot of like a high megapixel camera would for traditional photography. You could just zoom in and zoom in and zoom in and just get more and more and more detail. I mean, the level of detail and the actual wideness of the field of view, I mean, it's fantastic to look at. And remember that over the next 10 years, it's just gonna get better and better and better. And so I love doing projects like this. I mean, I'm endlessly fascinated by space, and I'm really excited to see where this data takes us in the next 10 years. And hopefully we've gotten across the breadth and goal of this project and just how unique it is compared to everything else. But this isn't really a competition. I remember the astronomy community support each other. There's mutual admiration. I mean, all these team members have worked on other projects like the Hyper Supreme camera and stuff like that. I mean, it's really a tight-knit community. But as a camera reviewer myself, they're not going to say it, but I think this camera kicks the of all the other cameras out there. I mean, just the amount of data you get, the detail, what it's trying to accomplish, it's fantastic. So this is an amazing project made possible by the support from the NSF and the DOE, and we're very grateful to be a part of this and to be able to see this. And I hope you guys enjoyed this video as well. So definitely leave your comments below. Let us know if you have any thoughts or anything you want to share. Hopefully you're as excited about this project as we are. We're going to be talking about this on the podcast as well. So definitely check out the PetaPixel podcast on this exact same YouTube channel or all the places you love to listen to podcasts. And you know what? The PetaPixel team was flown out here and put up here by you guys, the PetaPixel members. So we really appreciate those memberships. It really does help us make projects like this. So if you like the work we're doing, please support us that way and consider getting a PetaPixel membership. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you soon with more on PetaPixel.
My name's Stephanie Deppa. I am the astronomy content strategist for the Vera C. Rubin Observatory Education and Public Outreach team. And the question I'm most excited for this incredible facility to help us answer in the universe is whether or not there is a Planet 9 out there in the solar system hiding somewhere in the dark beyond Neptune.
So I'm Colin, I'm an astronomer at the Rubin Observatory, and I'm most excited to use this map of the sky that we're creating to study our own Milky Way and the structure and the interactions it's having with galaxies in the neighborhood of the Milky Way.
My name is Kevin Reel. I'm the Rubin Observatory scientist. In the Rubin dataset over the 10-year survey, the most exciting part to me is looking in the time domain at stars that explode. When I teach undergraduate astronomy, my favorite lecture is iron core collapse supernova. And so we'll get millions of those per year to look at. And that will be the most exciting thing for me.
Hi, my name is Carla Peña Ramirez. I'm a senior observing specialist here at Rubin. And the most exciting part of being in Rubin is that we are going to enter in a temporal dimension in the studies of the physical processes that we have in the universe. Until now, we have just a snapshot of those physical processes, and now we are going to map the temporal dimension and see processes since the beginning and hopefully until the end in a bunch of parts of the sky.
Hi, I'm William O'Malan. I'm the Data Management Project Manager. Here I am also responsible for all software, control systems, networks, fiber, the whole thing, anything that's not a piece of engineering, basically I look after it. And I'm most interested in confronting the models that people have for lots of things like dark energy, but also the structure of our galaxy, giving them a bunch more data. So instead of there are 3 galaxies, they're going to get 1 billion galaxies or 3 billion galaxies from me, because I'm going to measure 20 billion. And they're going to have to figure out how that works in their model. And if we can find a few aliens, that would be fantastic, but very unlikely.